to the Police and Crime Panel meeting and the annual meeting. I think the first thing we could do, it would be good to start off with some introductions. So I can start off to my left.
Hi, good morning everyone. I'm Councillor Eileen Taylor and I represent Chapel Allerton Ward and Community Council.
Morning everyone, I'm Councillor Nicole Sharp. I'm also from the City Council and I represent the Temple.
Good morning, Councillor Hassan Khan from Bradford Council.
Paul Sullivan from Bradford Council, representing the rural ward.
Good morning, Councillor Neil Buckley from Old Woodley Ward in Leeds. Councillor Robert Fulmer from Colwell Council, I represent Bradford.
Morning, I'm Jo Sykes, I'm the panel's independent members.
I'm Fiona Bernardo, Partnership Support Officer.
I'm Catherine Hankinson, the Deputy Chief Constable of West Yorkshire Police.
Tracy Brabin, Mayor of West Yorkshire.
Alison Lowe, Deputy Mayor of West Yorkshire.
Wendy Stevens, Research Manager, Policing and Crime.
Julie Reid, Head of Policing and Crime.
Hi, I'm Catherine Hankinson, and I'm from the Deputy Mayor of the Bathurst.
Good morning, I'm Susan Richards from the Police Officer. Newson Ward.
Good morning, I'm representing the Edinburgh Ward.
Morning, Trevor Lake, independent member.
Good morning, I'm Anne Kingstone from Calderdale. I represent the Skirker Ward in Halifax.
I'm Councillor Usman Ali for Wakefield Council and I represent Ward 5, Crossland, Wagner, Walton area.
Councillor Anthony Smith from Kirklees, representing Lindley Ward.
Morning, Councillor Sakras Nazir Bradford, represent the Ward of Manningham.
Good morning, Sharon Fraser from Wakefield Council, the legal advisor to the panel. The first item today is the appointment of the chair for the year ahead of the panel. Could I invite nominations please for the Ward Chair?
I nominate Councillor Eileen Taylor. Thank you.
Are there any other nominations please? We move to vote for the chair, and voting is by a simple majority and by a show of hands please. So I will shortly ask those members to vote for, against and then for any abstentions. So votes in favour of Councillor Taylor. Votes against. A simple majority. Welcome as Chair, Councillor Taylor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to be the chair of Police and Crime. This is something that I'm looking forward to work alongside you with people. Most of you have been on for many years, so I'm looking at you to guide me through past the next few months, but then with Mary as well, so I'm critical. And also it's lovely working with Alison and Tracy, working on for many years and looking forward, Alison, for your expertise and before we can call you whenever I hope. Thank you. So should we move on to the second to appoint our vice chair for the next 12 months? Could we have a nomination for the vice chair, please?
Nominate Councillor Usman Ali.
Are there any other nominations? No. So all those who are in favour? Against? Abstention? Thank you, that's been carried. Councillor Usman Ali? Okay. So we've gone to item 2, Police and Crime Membership Report attached.
Yeah. Okay, this report sets out the membership of the Police and Crime Panel, and the panel is asked to note the 10 local authority appointments, to note the 2 independent cooperative panel members, and to consider and approve the 3 local authority cooperative nominees set out at 4.2 of the report.
Thank you. Item 3.
We'll just check that members are happy with those.
Sorry, our members are happy with 3.
Yep.
Thank you. Item 3, apologies of absence, there are no apologies.
We have no apologies of absence apart from the Chief Constable and the Deputy Chief Constable to come along.
Item 4, which is to approve as a current record of the minutes of the so take that all members who was here have read the report and are you happy with the minutes? Yeah? Yes. Second. Item 5, this is, sorry? Right, sorry about that. So, I was asked to thank the outgoing members who has been here for numbers of years and have dedicated themselves and this panel. So as you know, every year, sometimes we have different members, 2 or 3 years. So I'd just like to pass my thanks to all the members, and especially to the chair who's in the new city council, who's now our Lord Mayor from Leeds. They have sent our best wishes and wish them well in their new role. Yeah. Item 5. Item 5 is to note, I think the chair has agreed and can also the agenda. Does the member would be happy with that? Lovely. Any declaration of interest? No? Item 7, having arranged the rule of conduct of business, the report are attached. Member read the report, so happy with the report? Again, item 8, police and crime panel complaint annual report attached. Does members want that report and any comments? Are happy with it?
Yeah, before we move on to that, perhaps to raise a couple of corrections that we need to the report. Paragraph 1.1 shows me the words "and consider" on the second line striking out to reflect the arrangements in West Yorkshire by virtue of the mayoral arrangements for the Police and Crime Commissioner. The further addition is required to reflect that the panel only has the remit to consider complaints about the Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime insofar as they are not a member of the combined authority. Complaints related to the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor is a member of the combined authority actually refers to the combined one trust of the combined authority. The panel arrangements were, the procedure notes were amended at the relevant time, but the covering report has not been amended, so that just needs to be there as a correction. And the second chair is the same amendment to paragraph 2 to strike the words in the second consideration by the conference panel and replacing by the first monitoring officer of the combined authority.
Okay, is that called the item 9 review panel? Is that the same? No?
No,
not this item.
Okay, so members agree with item 8, yeah? Thank you. So we move on to item 9, which is panel complaint and misconduct. Mr. Manson?
This is every year the complaints and procedure is reviewed by a panel to see if it's still relevant, and it was decided that it would be a good idea to, or it was necessary to make some amendments around the roles and responsibilities of the panel to make it clearer and in line with the regulations. The revised wording makes it clear that the relevant decision making is by the panel, with advice provided by the monitoring officer and the police and crime panel officer, rather than with officers. So the panel are asked to review and agree the highlighted changes.
Chair, perhaps worthy of note, the changes do not reflect the same point related to the covering report of the previous item.
Yeah.
The amendments relate to those complaints within the unit of the panel in relation to deputy member.
So, as members noted the highlights, and then we start adjusting. Thank you. Moving to item 10, and the budget outcome 22-23 draft report. items been deferred?
Yeah, this item's been deferred. The Home Office haven't announced their settlement, so that will come out usually in July or August. So as soon as that settlement is made, then a draft budget will be forthcoming.
Okay, so we move on to item 11, which is the forming monitoring report. It's so straight to me. So, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Chair. And can I congratulate you on your new reign as the Chair of the Police and Crime Panel, and look forward to working closely with you and obviously all the members and new members. Thank you. Okie doke, so performance monitoring. This looks at the first quarter of the year, January to March 2023, and looking at the 4 priorities from the plan. Can I just, before I go into just a flag discussion with the Chief Constable we had about the increase in child neglect. I think you may remember last time I was here we discussed the challenge of the cost of living crisis and the potential for impacting on child neglect offences, and it's something I'll be raising further with local authority leaders. So looking at the priorities, the first priority is supporting victims and witnesses and improving criminal justice outcomes. Victim satisfaction has started to turn around with a slight increase. The number of rape offences is starting to fall, 43 offences less than last year. Outcome rates for serious sexual offences are rising, with 62 more victims receiving a positive outcome in comparison to the same time last year. Domestic abuse saw a 6.8 increase in crimes compared to the same time last year, but positive outcomes continue to rise, with 374 more victims receiving a positive outcome. And just to remind the panel that rising numbers also is a positive to some degree, because it shows confidence that victims feel that they will be heard and respected by the police and believed. So there is something bittersweet about those numbers. Priority 2, keeping people safe and building resilience. I'd like to thank the fraud investigation team. They've done an amazing job with over 180 forfeiture orders, totaling £10.7 million by the end of this year. Moving on to 232, that highlights the training by Safe Lives called Domestic Abuse Matters. Women's Aid were very encouraging that we rolled this out across West Yorkshire Police. It's a national training programme and it's rolled out here in West Yorkshire. Although the number of hate crimes is slightly fallen, the number of repeat victims is still increasing. And I'm pleased to see West Yorkshire Police have agreed an uplift in the number of hate crime coordinators, and they'll be receiving training from NPCC Lead for Hate Crime, and that is a national first. And I hope you agree with me that West Yorkshire Police are really interested in being innovative and being agile in the challenges that faces. So I'm really pleased to see that. Moving on to priority 3, safe places, thriving communities. You know, homicides are a key measure for the violence reduction unit. And the reason for this is shown at 313 with a comparison of the percentage of homicide victims by age. And this shows the higher numbers for 16 to 44 age group, with a sharp falling off for older victims. Knife crime is showing a 3% decrease compared to a 6% increase nationally. The most recent months have seen a small increase, but still lower than the same months last year. I know potentially we might be speaking about knife crime in our discussion going forward. Antisocial behaviour and neighbourhood crime will be discussed in Safer Places and Thriving Communities paper, that's later. Regarding police numbers, you'll know that that was one of my manifesto pledges, and the uplift programme is now drawn to a close with West Yorkshire Police exceeding its target for the number of officers recruited. Of course, this then has upward pressure on the number of officers recruited from ethnic minority backgrounds and the number of women. Moving on to the final one, moving on to priority 4, responding to multiple and complex needs. The update from the Violence Reduction Unit is included in the next paper with an understanding of the initiatives that work with young people in West Yorkshire. The missing persons figures look at the level of risk for different missing persons occurrences which shows that although the numbers are decreasing, the level of risk is increasing. And can I just thank Catherine Hankinson for her leadership on MISPAs across West Yorkshire. This takes a huge amount of police time, and it's something that I've raised with the Chief Constable, but also with my local authority colleagues about what more can we do around MISPAs in our community. Can I also just draw the panel's attention to first-time entrants to the criminal justice system are currently seeing a decrease, which reflects the data to September 2022. This is both adults and teens. This is good news for West Yorkshire. So overall, this report shows the continuing influence of the Police and Crime Plan to drive our priorities, and the Deputy Mayor and I use every opportunity to highlight the work here, both in the region and nationally. And I look forward to any questions on just that element, Chair. Thank you.
So I'm looking at 1.1.3 in the report, which shows there is a significant difference between overall satisfaction, this is victims of hate crime, overall satisfaction of white victims and for victims and callers from all other ethnic groups combined. So there's a satisfaction gap of 6.8%, which is down from 11.4% a year ago. Nevertheless, there's a gap between white people and people from ethnic minorities in terms of their levels of satisfaction on the outcomes of these crimes. So, what do you understand about why that gap exists? What do you know about the reasons for that gap? And how is it being addressed to eliminate the gap?
Thank you. It is positive that it is going in the right direction.
Yes.
But Alison, I wonder if you'd like to just speak to that.
So it was evidence. And when I was chair of this panel, we always talked about the gap between black satisfaction, BME satisfaction, and white satisfaction. It's there nationally, and it reflects, I believe, the institutional racism that exists in policing, in all systems, NHS, education, you name it, it is there. And so for black and brown communities, their experience of police and policing is different, and that's why the Police Race Action Plan has been developed, and that it's focusing on black communities because there is a national recognition from the Police Chiefs Council that black communities have traditionally been more adversely policed, and that when they have needed the police, they have been under-policed, to say the least. So what happens nationally happens here in West Yorkshire, and that is definitely the case. I think the fact that in hate crime, the impact of that satisfaction is prevalent is because the numbers of hate crimes amongst BME groups is highest. So when you look at the figures, race hate is always the highest, and obviously black communities traditionally don't feel that they get the response that they need, and the police have acknowledged that through the Police Race Action Plan. And also because it is very difficult, I think we've brought some outcome measures here for hate crime in the past, it's really difficult to give justice to victims of hate crime. Often it's in the street, you don't know who the person is, so you often don't get that justice. And when the numbers are bigger for black and brown people, then the outcomes for black and brown people are proportionately less than their white counterparts, and that's a fact. So I think, humbly, that they're the reasons, but the Police Race Action Plan does afford us an enormous opportunity to begin to rebuild those relationships with our black and brown communities here in West Yorkshire. I am the national lead for race disparities, equality and human rights, and West Yorkshire Police is running the Police Race Action Plan. Lots of different work streams are being adopted here, lots of oversight from our office. I think Wendy and Sharon from our engagement team have been heavily involved in working on some of that. We're working with Chief Inspector Dan Beach, who's got the overall accountability for that, but it's Richard Close here in Wakefield, who's the divisional commander, who has got the strategic brief, and we're meeting them regularly to understand what's happening. And I'm assured that the direction of travel is positive, but obviously the proof of the pudding is also in the eating. And when we see race disparities in stop and search, use of force, etc., stop and begin to reduce, then I believe that the people of West Yorkshire, all the people of West Yorkshire, will see an increase in satisfaction with West Yorkshire.
I've got another question for the item that's following very soon. I don't think there are any further questions before this. So 1.3.5 is about sexual offences. There is a category of other sexual offences which does not include rape offences. And my question is about something that we recently experienced in my ward. There was a lady who was stopped by a stranger to talk about the dog, and this led to him showing her his phone and moving on to showing her photographs of dating, which of course she was understandably very distressed by. Now, hats off to the police, they responded quickly. She went home very distressed and she reported it. But I wanted to give advice to other women in the area before we knew they had been found, about how they should deal with similar incidents if they had an experience like that. So I went on to West Yorkshire Police website to look at reporting advice and just advice about how to deal with an incident like that. And I didn't find anything on the West Yorkshire Police. The reporting, loads of different types of crime, had online forms for reporting, but there was nothing about how to report a crime of this nature. No advice there. I had to dig around to find anything about sexual offences, sexual harassment. In an advice section, it wasn't clear, it wasn't like very visible and up there. And I thought, any woman that had just experienced something like that, how would they know how to go about reporting it and dealing with it? What would they know? So I just wondered if you were aware of that and what could be done about it.
I think that's something, Councillor Kingston, we can definitely take away and have a look at. Absolutely. I wasn't aware that you couldn't access advice when potentially you could access advice on other crimes, so we can definitely look at that.
Yeah, although of course you can ring 101, you could go on the chat.
Yeah.
So there are ways to speak to West Yorkshire Police to get advice, and there's triaging when you speak to the contact centre, and they will give you advice, but I suppose it's about simple information that you could have cut and pasted or done a link to. It would have been easy, but we'll definitely.
So there was some advice on the British Transport Police site that I found, but that was like national. You know, you could just do cut and paste from that, possibly.
But if you could send us that, then we can send that to West Yorkshire Police and suggest that something like that be added.
But that also helps me with my transport plan and my PCSOs on buses. That on my transport website, we should also have something like that as well. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to say, how often do you update your website?
Well, it's not my website.
I know.
So if I could go over to Deputy.
The West Yorkshire Police website, we won't have a specific, we'll update it as and when things need to be updated. It's fairly regular that we'll update things because things change all the time in terms of different crime types and so on. I was just having a look then actually as the council was just and I've done a type in. There is certain types of advice. It's whether it's particularly obvious, I suppose, other than doing a search for it, and it's whether it's definitely not specific to that type of offence. But there definitely is signposting on here around what to do if you are subject to that kind of sexual assault or influence, and the kind of people and support services that you can go to. But we'll have a look at it and see whether there's anything, and have a look at that BTP that you
something
mentioned.
in the reporting thing particularly, that was where I went first. There's nothing on the report.
Because the headline on the website is sexual assault, and there's information below that.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying about how to report.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, in the report, it mentioned that there are 10 extra hate crime coordinators. How many did we have before? And what proportion of an increase does that represent?
Not really. Yes, maybe we should, I don't think we, yes, I don't think we had any, did we?
No, we did, oh, we did, yeah, we definitely did have hate crime coordinators before. The exact numbers I don't want to commit to, but they'll be similar, so it'll be, I don't know if anybody on the back row knows the answer to that. If you do, shout to me. But there are 1 or 2 hate crime coordinators per district, and we've upped that. So essentially what these people do is, they will be people who will look at the incidents that come in every day in a particular district. They'll look for the kind of things that are in the report, like people who've been subject to repeat incidents of hate crime specifically. And then they'll look to coordinate with the person who's the officer in the case, all of the things around the investigation, but then really importantly, signposting them to commission services about what support they can do. Is there any prevention that they can do to help themselves in the future, and what kind of support? Because as the Deputy Mayor mentioned earlier on, clearly hate crimes are really impacted personal crime, isn't it, to people? So those are that's the kind of job really of those hate crime coordinators, to pull together those significant incidents and the incidents where we've got repeat victims, so that we can put extra support into them, linked in with the officers in the case. But in terms of how many we had before exactly, I could tell you, I'll be able to find out for you before the meeting probably, but I don't want to commit to tell you. Yeah.
But we'll find out and send it to you.
Yeah.
Would you circle it round?
Of course, yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Shaw.
I did have 2 questions, but the Deputy Chief Constable just answered my second one. So section 1.2.1, in terms of reporting, that section states that there's an increase in 999 calls and online reporting, but there's a decrease in 101 calls. Do you have any idea why that might be?
I'm not sure. I could ask the Deputy Chief for that, but I think one thing to just flag at this point that 999 calls are answered in just 5 seconds. It is a really hard target, and I think West Yorkshire Police have really kept that standard very high. But I don't know what the difference is in types of crimes.
Well, it's a myriad of all kinds of things. So 999s are definitely increasing. They are nationally, it's not just here. In fact, they're increasing more nationally, I think, than they are here. But still, as the Mayor says, that's a difficult target to keep to, but an important one, because we clearly want people who ring in an emergency to have a really quick resolution to what they're ringing about. We do offer the online services because we feel that's better than people waiting perhaps when they're busy with other things and it's not as urgent to be able to. So people, I think, are taking advantage of that, which is a good thing. But at the same time, we've got, so I think some of the 101 decrease will be taken across to an increase in online, because people will think actually 101 by its very nature shouldn't be that urgent. And therefore, some people will go to the online contact, which I think is a good thing. And I think sometimes people might ring 101, feel there's a bit of a wait, hang up and ring 999, sometimes inappropriately, which then see a rise in 999 and perhaps less 101 calls. So it's a really difficult, I mean, we get between 4,000 and 5,000 calls every day into West Yorkshire, so it's difficult to sort of understand the envelope of those on a day-to-day basis, really. But I think in general, those are the trends that we're seeing nationally, and I think that's what we're seeing in West Yorkshire.
But I think it's fair to say that the public perceive that 101 takes a very long time. And so if I was a member of the public, I would definitely go online if I had a 101 call. I wouldn't call 101 unless I had a lot of time on my hands. Having said that, the reality and the perception are always the same thing, because at times in the day, the average is about 4 minutes for 101.
Yeah, I mean, we monitor that on a daily basis.
The average
just
is
change,
but it can be much higher at peak periods, and I think the perception and the way that people talk to each other means that people are less likely to want to even try to phone 101.
If I could just use my own experience of using online, that a local garage alarm was going off, and submitting evidence of my concerns online, and the police were there in about 10 minutes. So when people also perceive that online just gets it, you know, nobody's really looking at it, I'd encourage people to really use online because it is very effective.
Thank you. It's regarding 1.3.6, it's to do with domestic abuse outcomes, but it's to do with the number of reported incidents, which I think for April 22 to March 23 was 64,580. That's a lot of incidents. And are you able to tell me if every one of these cases have been attended by officers, and if they have, is there any way of using different agencies for non-threatening incidents? Because that is a lot of incidents for officers to deal with.
I think it's a domestic abuse and it's a crime, isn't it?
Yes, but
So only the police can attend a crime, and only the police can decide whether or not a crime has been committed and then get that evidence together. So you couldn't have
different agencies.
You couldn't have a different agency to do that.
It's just a case of the amount of incidents for officers to deal with.
It's huge, isn't it?
It's a huge amount of work.
It is a huge amount.
MISPAs and domestic violence takes up a massive amount of police time.
I think to answer your question, we'll have attended the vast majority of those in different ways. There'll always be some where our victim will, at a point in time, not want to further engage. And for a very small minority of those, that means we won't actually physically end up seeing that person because they'll very quickly ring us back and won't engage and won't see us. That's not very often. In the vast majority of those cases, we will record a crime, and you have to understand within that there are a huge bucket of different offences, right from the very serious to fairly minor fallouts between people that live in family environments, and there's everything in between. So yes, we deal with them. Sometimes we deal with them via video link, which is quicker and good in terms of satisfaction quite often for victims. But clearly there are other people that we absolutely feel that we need to see face to face to make sure that they're safe and well, that we can properly signpost them to support agencies. So I think that's where the other agencies kick in.
Yeah.
We do our part, and there are clearly other agencies that we can then signpost to that can help a domestic abuse victim further down.
And I share your concern with these numbers, and that's why safety of women and girls was a priority, because we knew that this was something that needed addressing. It's critical that we get this right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
This contribution is a bit out of sync. And it's a comment for information really rather than a question. So whether this now was the chair of the Cape Strategy Committee at Wakefield to point out that it's about the coordinators are about much more than very much about raising awareness and promoting behaviour change and working with other agencies like Stop Hate and promoting campaigns like Being Behaved on the refuge lorries and stuff like that. And the successes that we've had in Wakefield, because I see it as a success, because we have more reporting. And that is a success because it reflects, it's like you're sleeping. It reflects more confidence in reporting and the fact that we've established more reporting centres. So, the figures are not just that simple. And I hope you don't mind me just.
That's very welcome. Thanks.
Any other question on this report? No? What I've noticed, interesting, is nobody past 12 months missing people. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just referring back to the issue that you raised, Tracy, around responding to multiple and complex needs. Obviously, we're aware of what's happened in the Met and the decision that the Commission's taken there. And it's clearly putting a strain on resources, and it's not a new thing. This has been ongoing and increasing for a great many years. Several chief constables have told us the same thing in West Yorkshire. You mentioned you had discussions with local authorities and health colleagues. I think it would be useful for the panel to know and understand if there's anything they could do to support you in that, and also how you see that stream of work moving forward, so that hopefully we are in the same position as London.
Yeah, thank you. Just to say to the panel, you'll be aware that Andy Cook had an intervention this morning about the fact that trust in the police is hanging by a thread, and that so much of police work is attending mental health crises. 600,000 across the country is my understanding. And this is why I felt it was really important to have an inclusivity champion, because I don't have responsibilities for health. However, we know that the inequalities in health are also impacting on every other part of my responsibilities. So Fatima Khan Shah, some of you may know, has just taken up the role of inclusivity champion. She's funded by us, but also, importantly, by the Integrated Care Board. So she stands across both organisations. So she's going to help me tackle some of these challenges that are about health inequalities, about lack of opportunities, about people the furthest away from the people that can help them. How do we get them closer to support? I think it is incredibly challenging, and it is something that the cost of living crisis has also exacerbated. But I want the panel to be reassured that it's something that is very important to me, and I know that West Yorkshire Police are in lockstep with us and want to see these changes as well. But just to reiterate, we are not the Met, and when people talk about the police and trust in police, forces vary, and Alison and I will always make the case that West Yorkshire Police has its own identity and its own expectations and its own targets and its own challenges. And we will hold the Chief Constable and the police to account where there are failures, but also celebrate where there are achievements as well. But I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think probably just in addition, right care, right person is probably something that you'll have heard in some of the media reporting, not least from the Met, but across the country over recent months. What I would say is a lot of the discussions and the media reporting that you'll have seen around the Met is ultimately around the principles of right care, right person, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It's making sure this is not about reducing demand on policing. That will be a side issue that will come as a result. This is about us being able to focus on the people, like the 64,000 domestic abuse victims, that it's absolutely the police to attend to and support, and to arrest people that need to be arrested, etc., etc. And then it's very much about other agencies doing their core business. And at the end of this, there is a person, and when we talk about mental health, who is in often crisis or is in very desperate need of help, and absolutely shouldn't be presented with a police officer in uniform when they're in that situation, because it's the person who needs help from the right people, and that's what right care, right person is about. And in the same way that the young missing people, the same thing for me applies, which is very often it is not for a police officer in uniform who will give that best response to that young person at the time. It often leads to unintended consequences that then, change life opportunities for that young person, when actually it's somebody who can sit down and understand what they're going through at the time. So I think it's not just about mental health, it's about all of that kind of area of concern and safeguard that we want to work with other agencies to give that best response to. But just some assurance for the panel, most of our policies, if not all of our policies that deal with these things, already encompass all of the principles of right care, right person, and have done for a number of years now. So there are no huge changes for West Yorkshire Police in this. This is about us all working in partnership to make sure that the right care is provided at the right time for people.
Caroline, thank you for that. I've loved the way you laid it out. I'm from mental health background, and in my past I used to work in a secure unit. And when the police did go out for mental health patients, some police didn't understand because they didn't train for it. But you're having the right agent now who train for mental health and who can give that individual the best attention from the very beginning. And if that's the reason, that's how it should have come to us and the news, not saying you're stopping police from doing access to mental health, because mental health call you when they need you. And that's when.
And I think what the right care, right person is trying to say is that background partnership work needs to strengthen.
Yes.
But of course, if somebody is in significant threat
the
of
police
harm
will
to
be there,
themselves,
but
then
the
the
right
police will
person
respond.
who understands and who can give that individual support at the time is and I think that's good. I'm passionate about mental health.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Mayor. My question is, it speaks to item 3, but it also overlaps with the next agenda item, and it addresses it crosses over several disciplines, as it were, including road safety and social behaviour, keeping people safe, etc. And it's the growing problem, and there's been a couple of high-profile cases recently of powered two-wheel vehicles, e-bikes, e-scooters, off-road motorcycles, and often the people with worst outcomes in these are the young people who are using these, but it also causes a great deal of distress for local residents, anxiety and social behaviour, damage to property, etc. And I know it's a really difficult thing to police and deal with, but I wonder whether we will look at specific strategies on how we can address that.
And that is in the next section. I don't know, Chair, if you want to move us to that
we can
point, or shall we?
Just 1 minute, is there a question on this agenda item? So could we wait until 12?
I just want to thank the Deputy Mayor, Alison Love, this is all the local representatives in my area, Crossford Isle Welcome, and Stockton, the social behaviour issues, and the local inspector, and thanks to Alison for coming to the public meeting and just showing the local community of the social behaviour issues that we have in the area. So let's thank Alison for that, for coming to the meeting and showing their support. You promised 750 frontline police officers in West Yorkshire, Tracy. How many of them have been accepted into the force, and when will they be put in place, and how many of them officers would be placed in Wakefield?
Well, the number of officers where they go is an operational matter for the Chief Constable. But Alison, if you want to take that. We are on track to hit the 750, so just to reassure you.
And just for information, I came to the town council, it wasn't a public meeting, and there was no press, and I didn't put any social media out about it. So just to put that in context. So there will be 60 police officers coming to Wakefield, so we've said that a few times here already, and that was a number given to the Mayor and I last year, and we're on track to deliver that 60. As you'll see in the paper, one of the issues that West Yorkshire Police has faced is the need to abstract some of the neighbourhood policing team to fill vacancies in other areas that have been deemed to have more priority. So safeguarding definitely has needed 100% staffing, and so there's been an abstraction, and there's also been vacancies which are quickly being filled, and the fact that what's called the PEQF, the Police Education Qualification Framework, which meant that you had to either do a 2 or 3 year course before you could become a frontline officer. That now has changed, and we can retain the current qualification, the IPLD, don't ask me to tell you what it stands for. I can probably remember if you do press. There's a fourth way into policing currently being developed by project policing. So the fact that we don't have to now do the 2 or 3 year, which has been very new, is that we can bring in police within the, is it the 13 or 18 weeks, I think detectives are 18 and police are 13, which means we can get more people on the front line more quickly. So West Yorkshire Police has over-recruited on the uplift that we were originally given, which was 854, something along that but we've actually over-recruited because we bid for additional posts, both bids, the 2 bids, both bids. So we'll have nearly 1,000 new officers coming into West Yorkshire, which obviously is a great thing. But what we also have to be aware of is that some of the police staff that the Mayor has found the funding for through the monies that we all pay in our council tax. Obviously, we agreed that there would be an 8% vacancy factor for that. So we're definitely still recruiting. We're recruiting PCSOs. It's an ongoing process. I think we're going to bring a paper with the latest outturn figures, but we're confident that the 750 is on track and will be delivered, and maybe even slightly over. But I'm always glass half full. We'll see.
If I may add just to those numbers for reassurance as well, that I am looking at every opportunity I can to recruit officers, staff and PCSOs. So for the panel's knowledge, we have apprenticeship levy share scheme in the Combined Authority, and I'm really pleased that ASDA had unspent apprenticeship levy, that we could offer a free service to use that money to then train 11 PCSOs. So the great thing about devolution and about mayoralty is that you can team and ladle resources. So I'm finding every opportunity to get those numbers up in every department across the whole place. But you talked about e-bikes, but maybe we'll come on to that in the next section.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So, question, may I ask how long it takes to train a PCSO?
Well, is it about 12 weeks?
I was going to say 14.
Yeah, 13. 14.
But I'm don't take that as a definite. I think from memory, I'm going to say 14, but we can let you know the definite.
Good question, because we've all got furrowed brows, so we'll find out the actual length of time it takes. Thank you.
And is there a question on your left?
She's on the level.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Just coming back to the domestic abuse figures at 2.3 in that table at the top of 2.3. Just next time we look at this, we get this table next time, is it possible to include the capita figures? Because it gives Wakefield, Bradford, it will be useful to know is there a concentration in one area that, because it's difficult to compare.
Because how big Bradford's bigger than
when we got the analyst.
Yeah,
so,
the queen of numbers.
Is it possible?
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Good point.
Are there any other questions? Thank you. Yes, I was going to ask in the last 12 months, the rise in disciplinary people that goes missing. We know in the past it's nearly mostly young people. Is it a balance in ages these days?
So we're still showing quite reduced numbers if you look pre-COVID. Clearly the opportunities for people to go missing during COVID were reduced. The opportunity for people, to be out meeting friends, etc. And so we are still reduced from where we were, but I've seen an increase as we come out, and things have normalised again. There is a mixture of young people and adults, and there is no, I think people sometimes think that there's a specific risk that's attached to different sections of people. There isn't. Every case of a missing person is assessed on its own merit.
Yeah.
We obviously know some people, many of our occurrences are repeat missings for lots of different reasons. That gives us information that we can use to understand and better risk assess. Then we'll allocate a risk assessment to that person. That then determines what resource we then allocate in terms of and how we look, because obviously there's a much bigger digital footprint these days in missing people's inquiries rather than knocking on doors or boots on the ground, as it were, which used to be the old-fashioned way of looking for people.
If I can say that the approach to using social media has been really, really helpful, hasn't it? It's given you a whole new suite of tools.
Yeah. But again, as with all of these things, it's a real balance, because on the one hand, it's a real helpful thing, but clearly you don't want to leave that footprint. But especially for young people, further down the line, because that employers then, do searches and then think wrongly that people are unreliable because they've been missing when they were younger, etc. So we've got to be really careful about using it when we think it's high risk and we absolutely need people to tell us where people are, versus thinking about people's privacy and perhaps the longer lasting impact it might have on people's lives. It's tricky making those decisions, I think, especially when you've got so many. You're asking people to make those decisions. Yeah.
We've been involved in working on an app, which is a private company that have approached us, and the West Yorkshire Police. They're developing an app called Safe and Found, where families, care homes, children's homes, whoever's responsible for an individual who might go missing, preempt all the stuff that we've just talked about by putting information on a secure app, saying, this young person or this older person normally goes on this route, this is where friends live, this is where they've been found before in the past, this is the bus route that they always use, whatever it is. So that all those steps can be taken by maybe the police or another agency, depending on who it is, before the police are even involved or need to put that social media stuff. So we're hoping that that's going to gain some traction and that more people will be found soon.
And certainly with older people and people suffering with dementia and Alzheimer's and so on, that's really valuable, isn't it?
And it's already in place, it's called the Herman Protocol, but it's a piece of paper, and who's got that piece of paper, and they don't update that piece of paper, so it's about putting it electronically and being able to update it, and then giving access to the police at the time when you need the police to have access after you've exhausted the online information, because you've been able to yourself or a few friends has or your neighbour has, but you don't involve the police until all those steps have been taken.
Thank you. So we move on to item 12, Safer Persons Thriving Community.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this is Safer Places and Thriving Communities, including serious violence and neighbourhood crime. And this paper looks to highlight the work that's taking place under the priority of the Peace and Crime Plan, which is Safer Places and Thriving Communities. And our engagement with communities for the plan, most frequently selected areas of focus: neighbourhood crime, road safety and serious violence. And I know you had a long session on road safety, I think, at the last panel. Neighbourhood crime and neighbourhood policing were the focus of a recent paper where West Yorkshire Police and the Deputy Mayor discussed various issues such as staffing levels in neighbourhoods and changes which have been seen in turnaround in victim satisfaction. And it was live streamed and it was pretty robust. So I would encourage members of the panel to please do have a look at that live stream, because you will hear my Deputy Mayor really holding the Chief Constable to account in this particular area to reassure members of the panel who obviously hear a lot about neighbourhood crime. This paper also looks at the recent monies provided to support reparative ASB activity under the immediate justice pilot that was discussed, I think, at the last panel. And just to let you know, on road safety, that progress has been made since you last had a discussion on it, with communications and data subgroups have been established with representation across partners. And we were recently awarded funding to the road safety. We recently awarded funding to road safety charity Break that are going to help us. The last key focus area is serious violent crime, and particularly the work of Violence Reduction Unit and Operation Gemlock in West Yorkshire. The VIU has now multi-year funding, which will really help us have a strategy to deliver and will ensure that all areas feel the benefit. You also know that the VIU is changing its name to Violence Reduction Partnership, which will reflect our hopes and our approach that this is a partnership issue, and we will get more out of this money working closely across 5 districts. And the data helps supporting each district to understand its requirements under this duty. Good news from Operation Gemlock, arrest of over 1,500 offenders and recovered over 500 weapons from our streets. Also a new initiative called Project Spotlight, showing great promise with a 39% reduction in serious violent crime. And finally, can I draw your attention to the number of projects which have received funding from the Mayor's Safer Communities Fund. This is the 4th round since I became Mayor, and really pleased that it closes today, so there'll be another round coming, but it's closed today. It's advertised £350,000 that's going to go back from criminals back into communities. Funds up to £8,000. So we also have stories and short films of people who've received this money on the website. So please do look at the WICA website under Police and Crime, and you'll see stories that the impact this money has had on communities. So please do have a look at that. I'll take questions, Chair, from that section.
Thank you. You have a question to answer for Civic. You want to answer?
Do you want to repeat the question, or?
You want to remember the
yes, it's around e-bikes, isn't it?
It's around e-bikes, e-scooters, off-road motorcycles,
yeah.
The impact it has on communities, the high-profile cases we've had where sadly people have lost their lives, and we've had examples of that in Kirklees with a motorcyclist a year or 2 ago. We know it's a difficult problem to tackle, but the availability and proliferation of these types of vehicles seems to be on the rise. People are concerned, and I'm wondering what specific strategies can be put in place to try and reassure the public and deal with the problem at source.
Thank you very much for raising this, and particularly going into the summer. As the MP for Batley and Spen, always this antisocial behaviour, it spikes in the summer. And only, I think it was yesterday, wasn't it, a young person was killed on an EV bike, having been part of I don't know whether it was a chase, but there was a police car that was nearby. But Neil, I wonder if I could turn to you for this item.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to introduce myself, Neil Hudson, I'm the Policy Manager for Vision Zero within the Combined Authority and Policing and Crime team. So in terms of some of the elements that you've discussed, I think it's section 2.1.9.3 actually talks about Operation Scribe Stoke as an example of some of the work that is being done. That is in 5 key areas, and I know that is Bradford, but it is replicated in other areas across all of West Yorkshire. There's monies that have come from Safer Streets funding to support the work around ASB, and there's a lot of work done within neighbourhood policing teams through supervision, working with off-road bike teams within neighbourhood policing areas as well, to try and support the challenge. As you quite rightly say, it is a big challenge, but there is a lot of activity that is ongoing within each of the districts of West Yorkshire using the Safer Streets funding in order to support that.
Could I just add though, as councillors, could I encourage you to tell the public, please report it, because they feel that, oh, it's just a whole load of kids on bikes and it's something we can do. But the police can't provide resources until there's clustering. So it really helps bring money to sort the problem if the community gives the police the evidence. So whilst it feels like something the police wouldn't be as a priority, please, please, please do report it.
Yeah. And often e-bikes are stolen, because obviously they are thousands of pounds if a young person's riding an e-bike. I'm not saying that they've stolen it, but it could be linked to organised crime in that community. So it's important for the police.
Can I follow up? So, personally, I do encourage residents to report because feedback they get is you form 101 and nothing happens. And I do give them the message that the more things are reported, they look for the police look for patterns and then direct resource if people report. So, yeah, take that on board fully. Specifically though, around engagement, I know it's terribly difficult because of the examples that we've seen. You know, if the police seem to be damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they follow these guys and they end up in an accident, the police are at fault. You know, if the police do nothing, the police are at fault. Is there anything that can be done practically to sort of are these bikes legal? Are they legal to be on the road? Are the e-scooters legal to be on pavements? How can these people be challenged? What can we do? Is there anything practical that we can do?
There's one thing, and then I'll come to Alison. But I think what we're trying to do with our early intervention and diversion is to try and fund projects that are as exciting as riding a bike. For young people like Bumpy, to you know, help them develop skills as well about repairing bikes, and those sorts of interventions is really important. But when it comes to communities and police, it's a tricky subject.
Yeah, so I actually went to Colterdale 2 weeks ago and met with the local NPT inspector, and we actually focused quite a lot of our conversation on that visit on this very issue, because they had developed a project that they're all called ops something or other. This was an op, but I can't remember which one it was. And for the last 12 months, they've been using the Mayor's Safer Communities funded monies to put lots of resources into taking out the criminal element of e-bike use at e-scooters, which are not legal on the pavement. Actually, I don't think they're even legal on the road yet.
It depends whether you're in the pilot area or not.
So it's a pilot area, so it's not legal here in West Yorkshire. And they've done a load of work around it, which they've complemented by really judicious use of social media. So they have been watching the young people on Snapchat and all the various things that young people put themselves on, speeding, committing crime, antisocial behaviour on these different modes of vehicles, and then they targeted those young people in the communities, and they've had a massive reduction in calls for antisocial behaviour, taken out lots of different illegally used bikes, e-bikes, all the rest of it, really, really successful. In fact, they want more money, which is why I'm so glad that the next safer, the funds are going to come again. The application form comes on the 16th of June, so we're going to hopefully reapply to get some more of that money because the police are really putting it to good use. Another thing that they've been using, and that all police can have access to across West Yorkshire, is smart water. So whether young people are taking the mick because they know they can get down that ginnel and the police can, although more police can now because this £550,000 that the Mayor brought into West Yorkshire means that there's more bikes and more trained police officers able to use that bike, and that's what's been in Colterdale. They were relying on two trained officers who could ride bikes coming in from Kirklees. They've now trained up their own officers, and when they get this qualification, they'll be able to follow the young people on these bikes. But you can spray them with smart water, and then which obviously stays on your skin for up to 6 months and on your clothes up to 6 months. So then they can identify those young people after the event and be able to stop that. But also, we want to work better with our communities and with our partners. So, for example, the police were telling me about Ovenden Green in Halifax and how lots of antisocial behaviour is being facilitated by the fact that there wasn't a fence around this huge amount of green space going in and out of the community. Two social landlords. Ironically, I had a meeting with those two social landlords the very next day. I raised it, just had an email back from one of them to say that they're putting their fence up because they've been asked for a long time. And the other, I'm still chasing, but we will get that fence. And Ovenden Green will be a safe place for the communities of that area once again.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, really, I think right at the front end and trying to, alert young people to some of the dangers, because I do think people think these are electric scooters, you know, what's the big deal? It's not, they're not a motorbike. And I actually don't think a lot of young people think they're doing anything wrong in many respects. So I think there's that education which we're doing through, and I'm sure the Chief's spoken to you before about Paul Ed, which we have made freely available to all schools in West Yorkshire, which spans from the very young age of 4 right through to college age. And obviously the different inputs for children around road safety and e-bikes will be part of that, are very different depending on age. That's one of the ways in which we're trying to get into young people's psyche about things. And then we very much, where there are very specific issues that the Deputy Mayor's just spoken about, then clearly people need to be targeted. But when people are using e-scooters, it's not just kids, there are grown-ups who think, oh, this is quite an efficient way of getting to work, and don't think they're doing anything wrong, they're in a cycle lane and off they go. Then we use the 5 E's that we used really for COVID, which is that kind of explain, engage, and it's only when we get to that very end stage, you've been told this now 3 or 4 times, and then we use the enforcement around no insurance, and we do seize vehicles from people, but we don't go straight to that, because I do think there is that real, in some places, you go to Liverpool and you can hire these just like a Boris bike and off you go. So it is a difficult comms message, I think, at the moment. I think people are a little bit unsure as to whether they can use them or not. So.
And when you see them on the streets, you think, well, it must be legal because there's so many of them.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. My question is on impact as well, about the levels of police officers and PCSOs, especially in light of, well, it's not a revelation to some of us, that 15 to 20 minutes of irregular patrolling reduces more or less all crime. I wanted to know what you think about this, and to point out clearly by that evidence you're getting more bang for your buck, and you should be investing more in that and less in the other things that are to one little bit of a community. If this is an area that's getting patrolled, it's everyone in that area who are benefiting by the reduction. Thank you.
Well, I would agree with you 100% that we need more money for the police because we've seen over the last 10 years that the funding for police has eroded, and that reassurance that you were talking about, which is patrols, the police officers and the chief is having to take daily decisions about where the priorities are. But we want people in West Yorkshire to feel safe as well as be safe. But as you know, that we've just been talking about online, we will probably talk about cybercrime and so on, that there's much more to policing than just being present in communities. It's also about solving crime, and that's resource heavy. I would love to see more police officers in patrol cars going around our communities, but I also want to keep the people of West Yorkshire safe as well as reassured, and it is a matter of balance for the budgets that we have. But you know what my priorities are as well, that violence against women and girls, for example, would not be resolved necessarily by patrol cars in communities. So we have to have priorities, and where we put our limited resources to make sure that people do feel reassured. But I don't know, Alison, if you want to add anything to that.
Well, just I think if we, this is why you made your pledge of 750 more police officers on the streets of West Yorkshire, because we recognise that police are in our communities, not just make people feel safer, but make people safer. And it absolutely validates and vindicates your decision to prioritise that on your election.
Because let's not forget, 20,000 police officers were cut by the current government, and we are only just clawing back to those numbers. We need more police officers, we need more staff, we need more PCSOs, and it's something that I say at the highest level, that you've got to give us the resources to deliver for the people of West Yorkshire.
Thank you. You said solving is resource heavy, and indeed it is, but the words in here are deterrent and suppression of crime. So that's preventing it, that's saving it to have to put the resources, lots more resources in the prevention is better than cure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, it was a question really going back to the e-bikes question. And as some councils in this room will know, Leeds will shortly have an e-bike scheme run by a private company but fully sanctioned by the council. So we're going to have hundreds of these things on the streets at any given time. The city centre in particular, and the inner ring of suburb, not the outer areas. And it just struck me, what does the law say about riding these things into pedestrianised areas? And what happens when an old lady is bowled over and taken to hospital? What sanction does she have against these e-bikes?
Thank you, Councillor, and I'm very glad you raised this because the e-bike scheme in Leeds, it was a manifesto pledge of mine and we funded it to the tune of 2 million. We've 300 bikes because we cannot tackle the climate emergency if we can't get people out of cars. And the only way to do that is to offer travel options, which are buses, public transport, but also to have that last mile that people can use a bike, an electric bike. In fact, I had the pleasure of riding one only this week, and they are fabulous and to be recommended. Now, EV bikes really help us with our topography in West Yorkshire because we've low hills, and it will encourage, hopefully, more people to use bikes. Also, inclusive bikes. We're looking at programs of trikes and so on, so it won't just be for the very fit, but it'll be for everyone. If someone is knocked over by a bike of any kind, or a skateboard, or a scooter, that is a crime, and that's an accident that will be logged. Now, my priority is to fund bike lanes and separate bike lanes that would be safe for a 12-year-old. And that's my threshold. That's what I've been working with Chris Packham, you may know, on trying to make sure that when you choose to cycle, you are safe. And that's why separating bike lanes from traffic and from pavements means that more cyclists will use cycle lanes rather than pavements and roads. So I do share your concerns about safety, but I am very excited about this opportunity for West Yorkshire. And if this goes well, they'll also be rolled out across other districts.
I'll just come back briefly. So that means in pedestrianised areas, if they collide with a pedestrian, they're liable.
They shouldn't be on the pavement. If you're on a bike, you're on the road or you're in a cycle lane. But in order to protect pedestrians, that's why I'm investing with Leeds City Council and many others across the region in separate cycle lanes so that we don't have that collision between pedestrians and cyclists.
Tracy, I'm still at the moment they are on the pavement. What do we do?
It's very annoying, I agree, and certainly in the city centre of Leeds at the moment, there's cones everywhere, there's roadworks, there's diversions, and cyclists are taking shortcuts. Yeah. And you don't want to get into an altercation, but say, on the road, off the pavement, it's disrespectful.
It is.
And it's potentially dangerous.
So there's another question. If a car not on the road, I can claim from the insurance or whatever. What happens as Councillor Buck said, then I can let them down and come out.
To ride a bike, you don't need insurance. That's
so what happens if something serious happens?
But I mean, you're still liable.
Yeah,
that's
a liability.
That person who's driving that bicycle, who's riding that bike, if they knock somebody down and they're found to be at fault, obviously you have to be found to be at fault, then the person who's injured or their family, if the person is unfortunately not here, then you can sue that person, So
yeah, we have to be real.
Because they don't have insurance, that's the difference.
I know a car, some do it and run, but the car is there to give an evidence that it belongs to Tom Jones, but the bike, I haven't got anything to say it belongs to Tom Jones. So there's a bit of, maybe you can answer that question.
I'm sure lots of players make it.
Yeah, it's just came in the thoughts, now what happened if somebody did not happen? So that's something maybe really need to, not for you, for the
It's
manufacturer.
legislation now.
Yeah,
Yes,
for the manufacturer to make sure if there's a hit and run with the bike, it's something there just like a car.
So I don't have powers over that.
No,
but I do have powers over cycle
you.
lanes, and I'm going to try and make sure that we can have cycle lanes where people can
Yeah,
safe.
because we need safety right across for everyone, and we need the environment. So it's the balance.
I might jump in and I think you've got a question.
Okay, yes.
Have you changed partners?
No, it's just that I know that Trent's question is in the order of the page that Trent's question is coming from.
Okay, I mean, it's a generic question really, but thanks for the paper it's spoken of. I mean, clearly we can see the success you've had so far, and that's despite maybe the starting levels at 2.1.7 million down against where we'd like it to be. Back in December, we had a presentation on the medium-term financial forecast, which forecast at that time around £36 million deficit for the coming financial year. Now, I'm sure a lot of steps have been taken since then to mitigate the vast amount of that, but given that over 80% of the funding cost of West Yorkshire is down to people costs, it's invariably going to mean pressure on you in terms of manpower planning, vacancy factors, etc., etc. So my question is, how confident are you of being able to maintain and deliver on so far and future targets with that financial pressure?
I just say we like to say women power, not manpower.
Yes, sorry, I thought I was losing apologies. Yeah, clearly we've done a lot of work to bridge that gap. In the meantime, of course, we have. And we're running a process at the moment, which I think probably the Chief has spoken about before, called voter-based budgeting, which is looking very specifically at are we as efficient as we can be with the resources we've got at the moment, and really importantly, what technology can we use that we've either already got or can invest in to save to make some of those processes, which are sometimes very bureaucratic, even into the wider criminal justice system, so that we can better utilise the resource that we've got presently. So yes, there's a lot of work going on in the background with our finance in terms of how we make that budget balance in the years moving forward. PBB is a big part of that, and obviously the way that we recruit moving forward in terms of police officers and police staff is another big part of that as well, along with other things such as making sure that all our contracts are appropriately managed and etc. etc. I mean, a lot of that deficit is around things that are largely out of our control. So things like pay awards, for example, things like electricity and gas prices, petrol prices, we're a people business, aren't we? So whereas I think a lot of businesses have been able to go entirely online and put a lot of that extra cost, policing is a business where we do need to go out and we do need to see people and make sure they're safe. So we can't put a lot of that stuff that other perhaps companies and businesses can put. We're unable to in quite the same way. So it's really not one specific thing. It's about trying to eke efficiencies across the board, and that's a big part of what PBB is set up to do.
Can I just add that none of the deficits that are described at 2.1.7 are because of the fact we haven't got any money. We have got the money to fund those costs, but it's about the speed at which you can bring the people in, and also choices being made about where the people coming in are being employed. So safeguarding is mentioned in the paper, but also we were, the West Yorkshire Police were forced, as were all forces, to up the number of people in the Rockies, for example, the regional organised crime units. We had to give quite a lot of staff to the Rockies, so we were recruiting them, and then we have to So it's an ongoing recruitment process that's happening, but the money for all the posts that were promised, that are budgeted, is there. And clearly we're doing everything we can to increase the recruitment so that we can bridge the current gap. And also you mentioned £36 million deficit. We didn't actually start 2024 3-4 on 36 million. I think we started on 26 million. I think we got it down quite considerably by the start of the financial year. 26 million is a lot of money. A lot of money. It's a bit less than 36 is all I'm saying.
Thanks. I'm not sure you answered the question about how confident are you on delivering forward the scheme, that big financial deficit.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I said this and I'll say it again, the confidence is tempered by the reality of the situation that we're in. When you're having to make year on year substantial savings, the risk to the delivery of the Mayor's Police and Crime Plan is real, and we are alive to those risks. So we're not going to say to you or to the public of West Yorkshire, everything's all right, because everything is not all right in this world. We are working alongside West Yorkshire Police to make sure that the priorities of the people of West Yorkshire, particularly around CSE area, the things that they said were number one when we asked them, antisocial behaviour, the things that are in the plan, we're going to focus the resources that we have got on the things that matter to the people most. And obviously it will be up to the people of West Yorkshire to determine whether they are satisfied that they're delivering those priorities or not in a few months' time.
Yeah, 3,000.
Then, so we will come to my question. I'm on page 12 of the report at 2.3.5.6. This is the BRU unit, and they've got a new engagement manager in place. And one of the initiatives that engagement manager is going to be supporting, or is supporting, is called Leaders Unlocked. So the recruitment campaign was launched for young adults aged 14 to 25 to join a new youth commission. And he talks about how part of the intention is to gain honest insights from young people who may not otherwise have a voice, including those from underrepresented and minority groups. And I wondered, has that recruitment already occurred? How much of it has already occurred? I saw some photos that I think might relate to this, of some young people out on a walk or something. Maybe I'm not certain it was related to this. But what I did notice in those photos were all the young people I was seeing in those photos, they were all white. Okay, so I wondered, has that recruitment taken place, and how representative of our communities are the people that have been recruited?
Firstly, can I just say this is a really exciting moment, because I've said we need to understand what young people need from us as leaders, because what we're implementing now impacts on them and their lives and their futures and their children. So to have this this group telling us their lived experience, that's how it will help us inform our decisions. But to the recruitment, Alison, you've been quite close to this.
Yes, I have, and I've met the young people, and they are diverse. I mean, obviously it could always be more diverse, but there are young people, and not just diverse in terms of their background, but where they live geographically. They come from the five corners of West Yorkshire, which is great. So 19 young people have been recruited, 19 young people have been recruited so far, because...
19.
Yeah,
yes.
19, yeah. So Leaders Unlocked is an organisation that both recruits the young people and trains them to become researchers, and then those young people go into their communities and they ask questions based on the priorities that have been determined at the start of the process. So I was at the meeting that determined the priorities, and the young people themselves come up with, having been informed by various specialists in the room about what some of the issues are, the young people come up with, from their own lived experience, what the priorities are, then from the data, the evidence sets, what I think is the best use of their time. And knife crime was one of the first things, so I think it's 3 priorities. knife crime was the first priority that was identified. And so these young people were trained in different research methodologies, and they will go out into their communities and they will feed back to us it'll be a variety of different formats. Some of it are written, but it's about meeting the needs of those young people. Some of them were neurodiverse, some of them writing reports won't be their thing. So we'll get that information in a variety of different ways that meets their needs and that gives us the information we need. And then we'll be able to respond in terms of what the Violence Reduction Partnership is able to do, given that it's got 3-year funding, but we're in year 2, and that funding is reducing, but we have got resources there that we want to spend as effectively and sufficiently as possible. So it's quite exciting, great young people from all walks of life, as I've said.
If I could just add as well that we were inspired by Young in COVID, which is in Bradford, and those young people went into their communities and talked to other young people about the impact of COVID, and that helps with decision makers to understand what the lived experience is like. Because how on earth do we know when we're as old as I am, so far away from young people's experiences? So they were the inspiration. Also, I'm hoping to get a youth combined authority to shadow us, so that we have young people talking about transport, talking about housing, skills, and so on. So it's a longer term mission to get more connected to young people across the whole of West Yorkshire.
I think it's fair to say that there's already quite a lot of interaction with young people and engagement with young people. So we've got the youth advisory group, for example. This is to complement. It's not that the only thing that we've got. There's a variety of different ways that we talk to young people. I go and talk to young people in schools all the time and in places where they are. And there's lots of interactions with the DIU already with young people. So last summer they did a big piece of research in Newsom Ward, I think it was. And a few other adjoining wards around knife crime and why young people carry knives. There was a nice piece of research that came out of that. But that was adults asking children, and this is children asking children, and that's what we hope will give us that little bit of additionality, because we're not getting it right and we need better, and this is one of the things we're trying to do differently.
Thank you. Okay, any questions? Okay, so we move to item 30, which is published key decision. This is only for your info. Okay, so we want to do this in for take item 40. May response to any current issues.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. Can I invite the panel to join us for the launch of the West Yorkshire Plan? It's our vision for 2040 for West Yorkshire, and we've co-created it with leaders across the districts. And it's focusing on the long term and looking, as I say, at 2040, the framework for strategies and investments in the future, and making sure that we all are in agreement around what our priorities are, that West Yorkshire is a prosperous, happy, well-connected, sustainable and safe place to live, work and do business. So it would be great if you have the time to come and join us, as I said, at the Corn Exchange on Friday, the 16th of June. It's also Pride Month, and we're supporting, I think we're going to lots across the district. You're going to all of them. I'm going to a few. I recently went to the one in Standedge Tunnel in Kirkcasing. That was fantastic by the crowd. So we're supporting lots of different events. The engagement team will be at the Pride events, talking to the community about their thoughts and concerns about policing and community safety. Obviously, having conversations is how we can help formulate responses to what's going on. And also the summer survey, which this year covered antisocial behaviour, road safety, that Vision Zero, and confidence in policing. Also, I've mentioned the Safe Communities Fund, but the Walk Safe app launch in Bradford, really successful. And thank you for your leadership as patron of Bradford at Night. And it works to showcase and develop Bradford City Centre's evening and nighttime economy. And Bradford became the world's first walk safe city with the launch of a new initiative to help people make safe journeys on foot across the centre any time of day and night. And I know the police are feeding in data continually to that app. So I'd encourage colleagues from Bradford to try and encourage people to download that. And I'd like it, if it's successful, to be rolled out across the whole of West Yorkshire. And the city's Business Improvement District has teamed up with Walk Safe to give us that free phone app, and it helps people control their own safety. I think Alison said the app builds on the huge amount of work already done to help women and girls feel safe and a step closer to achieving that vision. So thank you, Alison, for the leadership in that. And if I could just feedback on the impact of our Safer Parks research that was really innovative, attracted a lot of attention from BBC, Radio 4, and Guardian and others about the innovations around Safer Parks. And it's really pleasing to see that already across the country, people are using that research to help them with their decision making around design and renovation of their parks. So that's all good news. And so I'll end on an upbeat note there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Yes, we have spoken so much in this meeting about two things. One, I saw that there's been a new park designed in Bradford, designed by local girls. That was excellent to see.
Who did by the mayor?
Yeah. But just the launch of the West Yorkshire plan for the corn exchange in Leeds. What time?
I think it is 10 o'clock.
I just looked online and I can't find it, so I need to know.
Oh, right. I think there was changes about leaders' availability. That's probably why the time wasn't on there, but I'll make sure it's now on there and I'll get that back to you. I think it's 10 o'clock, but I will feedback to be clear. Maybe my brilliant office manager, Melissa, can tell me.
She'll come back. Is she looking for it?
Yeah, she's looking for it. She lets us know when she finds it.
Okay, she does.
No pressure, Melissa.
Yes, okay, thank you, Tracy. We move on now to item 15, agreed action log. Is it just an info? It's just your info. And item 16 is forward agenda plan. So we've got our agenda plan here. Yeah. Is members very happy with that, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, we move on to item 17, complaint received by the panel report attached.
Yeah, in line with the comments made earlier in relation to item 17, there is a correction needed to the paper, and that's 2.1 in the table. The second bullet point is there to give you the reason.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to item 18, any other business? One is happy. Item 19 is the date and time of the next meeting, which is in your agenda. What was that one? 14th of July. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for so nice to be the first meeting and looking forward to flowing in the future. Thank you.
Could I just quickly ask the panel, would it be helpful or of interest if my inclusivity champion, Fatima, came to talk to you? Would that be
So let's get to this.
my inclusivity champion, Fatima Khan, would it be of interest if she came to talk to you? About what she's doing around health inequalities?
I personally don't have an issue, and I'm sure
if it's of interest, I'm sure she'd be helpful.
We will get back to you because we will definitely get back.
Thank you. And the launch of the plan is 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. So Tracy was right. Rely on the woman.
It was touch and go. It could have been 50-50.
Tracy, we will get back to you. Put something on the agenda. So we'll say thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.